She believed she had finally found a new home, full of comfort and affection. But slowly the sweet gestures began to hide a cruel silence. Each object taken from her room was like erasing a piece of her history, and when physical pain joined her loneliness, the truth came to light in a devastating way. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Now, back to our story. Helen Miller never imagined she would one day live in a house as large and beautiful as this one. For 57 years of marriage to her Michael, the two-bedroom apartment in East Denver had been enough to raise their 3 children, welcome their grandchildren, and hold all the memories of a simple life filled with love. When Michael passed away, leaving only the echo of his voice in the walls of their home, Helen felt that a part of her had gone with him. Her children took turns visiting, bringing grandchildren goodies and worries about leaving her alone in an apartment that seemed to grow larger with each day of his absence. It was her middle son, Leo, who made the offer that would change everything. He had landed a high-level position at a multinational tech company, and his success had allowed him to buy a spacious house in the Cherry Creek neighborhood, one of Denver's most exclusive areas, complete with a garden, a pool, and plenty of extra bedrooms. Patricia, his wife of 8 years, had agreed it would be wonderful to have her mother-in-law live with them. After all, Helen had always been a sweet, quiet woman of few words and great faith. She wouldn't be any trouble at all. When Leo made the offer, Helen's eyes filled with tears. It was the first time since Michael's passing that she felt truly wanted. Her other 2 children lived far away, and visits were rare. Leo was offering not just a roof over her head, but a chance to belong to a family again. The move happened on a sunny Sunday in March. Helen brought only the essentials: some clothes, her rosary beads, her worn-out Bible with bookmarks in her favorite psalms, framed photographs of Michael and the children at various stages of their lives, the wedding album with pages yellowed by time, and the old floral print, armchair where she used to sit every afternoon to pray and watch the world go by from her window. That armchair was almost 40 years old. Michael had bought it at a clearance sale when Leo was born, and since then it had witnessed every important chapter of their family's life. Leo insisted on hiring a moving truck, but his mother refused with a shy smile and downcast eyes. It wasn't necessary. Her life fit into a few cardboard boxes, some cloth bags, and a faded armchair that carried more memories than weight. The new house impressed Helen. It was modern with high ceilings, enormous windows that let in an abundance of natural light and a view of the mountains, and impeccable decor curated by Patricia, who had a degree in interior design. Everything was white, grey, and beige. Straight lines, minimalism, a cold and distant sophistication. Nothing like the cozy clutter of her old apartment, where every object told a story. Here everything looked like it was out of a magazine. Beautiful, but impersonal. The room prepared for Helen was on the ground floor overlooking the garden. It was spacious with a private bathroom and a king-size bed. Patricia had chosen white and grey linens, feather pillows, a modern lamp. Everything new, everything expensive, everything without a trace of Helen. Patricia welcomed her mother-in-law with hugs and smiles. She had prepared a special lunch, made up the bed with new sheets, and even placed a fresh flower arrangement on the dresser. Helen thanked her, moved. Leo held his mother's hand and said with shining eyes, "You deserve this and so much more, Mom. Here, you'll have all the comfort you always gave us." For the first few days, everything seemed perfect. Helen would wake up early, as she had since she was young, at 5:30 in the morning, as the first rays of sun began to lighten the Denver sky, and go downstairs to make her coffee, the same ritual for decades. Patricia was still asleep, so the house was all hers in those early morning hours. The silence was different from the silence of the old apartment. Here in Cherry Creek, it was a luxurious silence, punctuated only by the chirping of birds in the garden and the distant hum of cars on the avenue. After coffee, she would sit on the back porch with her Bible, the thin pages between her wrinkled fingers, and pray, giving thanks for this new beginning, asking for protection for her children, and asking that Michael, wherever he was, watch over them all. Leo left for work early, at 7:30, always impeccable in his grey suit and leather briefcase, and returned late around 10 at night, always tired, always with his phone glued to his ear, but happy to see his mother settled in his home. It was in the second week that Helen noticed the first change. When she came down for breakfast, she found Patricia already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of green tea and her tablet. Her daughter-in-law smiled warmly and commented, "Helen, I've noticed you wake up very early. You don't have to worry about coffee. I'll have Joanna prepare everything when she gets here. You can sleep in a little, enjoy the comfort of the house." Helen hesitated. Sleeping in had never been her habit. Waking with the sun, making her coffee, it was part of her routine for decades. But she didn't want to argue. She thanked her with a nod and went back up to her room, feeling strangely out of place. Joanna, the housekeeper, arrived promptly at 8 every morning. She was a woman in her 40s, thin, short, with observant, honey-colored eyes and few words. Her skin was weathered by the sun, and her hands were calloused from a lifetime of domestic work. She had been working for Patricia for 3 years and knew her employer's tastes and demands well. Everything had to be spotless, nothing out of place, absolute silence when she was working in her home office, and discretion above all else. When she was introduced to Helen, Joanna greeted her respectfully, holding the older woman's hands in hers, and immediately recognized something familiar in her. The silent weight of someone who had learned not to be a bother, not to take up space, not to make noise. She recognized it because it was exactly how she felt every day in that house. Joanna lived in the Westwood neighborhood, on the other side of the city, and took 2 buses to get to Cherry Creek. She had 2 teenage children, raised with great sacrifice after her husband left her for another woman. She knew what it was like to depend on the goodwill of employers, to swallow humiliation, to smile when you wanted to cry. That's why, when she looked at Helen, she saw not just an elderly woman, but herself in a few years, invisible, silenced, tolerated. The following weeks brought other small changes. Helen liked to leave her bedroom window open during the day to air it out, but Patricia gently suggested it was better to keep it closed because of dust and insects. Helen agreed. She used to watch her afternoon soap opera in the living room, but Patricia commented that was when she liked to make her work calls and needed quiet. Helen started, watching in her room. She liked to use her floral armchair on the porch, but Patricia mentioned that the fabric clashed with the house's decor and it would be better to put it somewhere else. The armchair was moved to her bedroom, where it barely fit. Leo didn't notice a thing. He came home late, exhausted from endless meetings, urgent projects, and corporate travel. He'd quickly eat something Joanna had left prepared, or that Patricia ordered from a fancy restaurant, and then go up to his office to deal with pending issues, answer emails, and join video conferences with the team in the US. On weekends, there was always some professional or social commitment, meetings with important clients at restaurants in Cherry Creek North, corporate dinners in penthouses over in the Wash Park area, business trips to New York and Chicago. When he crossed paths with his mother in the hallways, always rushing from one room to another, he would ask hurriedly, "How are you, Mum? Do you need anything?" Helen would always reply with the same shy, resigned smile, her eyes downcast, her hands clasped. "Everything's fine, honey, don't worry about me. You can focus on your work. Your things? I'm doing great here." But everything was not fine, and it was getting less fine with each passing day. The real transformation began at the end of the first month, when Helen was starting to feel less like a guest and more like a part of the house. She came downstairs one April morning to find Joanna removing her armchair from the room, carrying it with difficulty down the hall. Patricia stood beside her, supervising with her arms crossed and a serene expression. Seeing her mother-in-law standing on the stairs in her cotton nightgown and worn slippers, she explained, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "Helen, this armchair is very old and taking up too much space in the room. The fabric is faded, out of style, and honestly, it cheapens the look of the room. I'm going to have it reupholstered, give it a modern update. In the meantime, you can use the chairs on the porch or the sofa in the living room. It'll be better this way, you'll see." Helen felt her heart clench, as if someone were tightening a knot in her chest. That armchair wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was so much more. It was the only piece of her old life, of her real home, that she had brought with her to this strange, cold place. It was where Michael used to sit to read the newspaper on Sundays. It was where she had nursed baby Leo. It was where she had prayed for her children through every crisis, every hardship. It was where she sat to talk with Michael's memories, keeping him alive through that simple object. It was where she found peace when everything else seemed to be falling apart. But looking at Patricia with that polite smile and those words wrapped in false affection, Helen couldn't find the strength to argue. She just nodded, swallowed the lump in her throat, and watched in silence as they took her armchair away, taking a piece of her soul with it. The porch chairs were metal and wood, stylish but hard. No cushions, no comfort. Helen tried to sit there to pray, but the pain in her back and hips, which had been bothering her for years, got worse. She would get up with difficulty, her trembling hands gripping the arm of the chair. Patricia watched from a distance, but said nothing. One afternoon, Joanna discreetly brought a small cushion and placed it on the chair where Helen usually sat. "You need some support," she said in a low voice, almost a secret. Helen thanked her with teary eyes. The next day, the cushion was gone. When Helen asked about it, Patricia answered matter-of-factly, "That cushion was stained, Helen. I threw it out. I'll buy you a new one. Don't worry." But the new cushion never arrived. Helen started to avoid sitting. She spent more time standing, leaning against the doorframe or the window, watching the garden. The pain intensified, day by day. At night, lying in bed, she felt every muscle ache. She used an ointment the doctor had prescribed years ago, a menthol gel that brought temporary relief. She kept the little blue tube in her dresser drawer next to her Bible. One morning, waking up in severe pain, she went to get the ointment and couldn't find it. She rummaged through the drawer with trembling hands. Nothing. She opened the nightstand, searched the bathroom. Nothing. The ointment had vanished. She went downstairs slowly and asked Joanna in a low voice, "Joanna, have you seen a blue tube of ointment I keep in my drawer?" Joanna denied seeing it and promised to look. Helen didn't dare ask Patricia. She just went back to her room and endured the pain in silence, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, tears soaking her pillow. Joanna, however, was no fool. She had worked in houses for over 20 years and knew the signs. She saw the way Helen got up, leaning on the walls. She noticed the expression of contained pain on her wrinkled face. She saw how Patricia watched her mother-in-law's every move with a cold, calculated gaze, always with a smile on her lips, always with sweet words and controlled gestures. One day, while cleaning Helen's room, Joanna found the ointment hidden in the back of a bathroom cabinet, under towels no one used. She took the tube, wiped it off, and put it back in the dresser drawer. She didn't say a word to anyone. That night Helen found the ointment, and her eyes filled with tears. Someone still cared, but the next day the ointment was gone again. Helen began to understand that this was no coincidence. It was something much worse. It was deliberate. It was silent. It was invisible to everyone but her and Joanna. Leo went on a business trip to New York and would be gone for a week. Patricia took advantage of her husband's absence to tighten her control. Helen's meals were now served at fixed times, with no room for variation. No snacking between meals, no late breakfast. "Discipline," Patricia would say with a smile, "is important for your health." Helen was losing weight, not from a lack of food, but from a lack of will. The house that was supposed to be a refuge had become a sophisticated prison where every move was watched, every complaint silenced, every discomfort minimized. And worst of all, her son saw nothing. Are you enjoying this story? Tell me what you think about it and how you think it will end. Joanna, however, was no fool. She had been working in houses for over 20 years since she was 16 and had to drop out of school to help her family. She knew the signs of what she was seeing in that seemingly perfect Cherry Creek house. She recognized the silent suffering because she herself had been through similar situations in other jobs, in other large, elegant houses, with other employers who wielded power through small cruelties disguised as care and concern. She had worked for families where the elderly woman of the house was treated like an inconvenient piece of furniture, tolerated but not loved, fed but not nourished. She saw the way Helen got up in the morning, always too slowly, leaning first on the walls, then on the furniture, her hand always on her lower back, as if trying to hold together something that was breaking inside. Her face contorted in pain even when she tried to smile. She noticed the expression of contained pain on her wrinkled face, in her eyes that no longer sparkled as they had in the first few days, when she arrived full of hope. She saw how Patricia watched her mother-in-law's every move with a cold, calculated gaze, like a predator studying its prey, always with a smile on her lips when someone was looking, always with sweet words that hid venom, always with controlled gestures that seemed affectionate but were deeply cruel when you looked closely. It was on a rainy Thursday afternoon in May that Joanna decided to act. Patricia had gone out for an appointment downtown in the Lodo area, something related to a new client from her design firm who wanted to renovate a penthouse apartment. She said she wouldn't be back until late afternoon. The house was quiet, with only the distant ticking of the old grandfather clock in the living room and the melancholic song of birds in the garden, muffled by the fine rain falling outside. Joanna went up to the second floor, treading softly on the marble steps so as not to make a sound, to Patricia's walk-in closet, a vast, luxurious space bigger than the living room of the apartment where Joanna lived with her children, filled with designer clothes organized by color and season, imported shoes lined up like little soldiers on special shelves, expensive brand-name handbags stored in illuminated niches with small built-in lights. At the back of the closet was a large, dark wood cabinet, locked with a key, where Patricia kept important documents, jewelry she didn't wear often, and other personal items she preferred to keep away from prying eyes. Joanna knew where the key was because she had seen Patricia get it several times, inside a small hand-painted porcelain box on the vanity, in the master bedroom. With her heart pounding and her hands sweating, Joanna opened the cabinet and found what she was looking for. There was Helen's ointment, hidden behind old files and papers, along with the small cushion that had disappeared from the porch. There were other things too, photographs of Helen that used to be displayed on the living room bookshelf, a wool shawl the old woman used on cold nights, even the handwritten recipe book that had belonged to Patricia's late mother-in-law, which Helen liked to flip through, remembering the dishes she used to make for her. Family. Joanna took the ointment, closed the cabinet, put the key back in its place and hurried downstairs. She found Helen sitting on her bed, legs outstretched, hands pressing on her lower back. The old woman looked up when Joanna entered, and in her gaze was so much sadness that the housekeeper felt a pang in her chest. "Mrs. Miller, I found your ointment," Joanna said in a low voice, closing the door behind her and checking the hallway to make sure no one was there. It was in the cabinet upstairs, hidden in the back under a pile of old papers. "You need to use it. You're in so much pain I can see it on your face." Helen took the tube with trembling hands that no longer had their former steadiness. She clutched the plastic to her chest as if it were a treasure, and her eyes filled with tears that trickled slowly down her wrinkled cheeks. "Thank you, Joanna. Thank you so much. You don't know how much this means to me. But how did it get up there? I could have sworn I left it right here in the drawer, tucked away safely." Joanna hesitated, biting her lower lip. She wanted to tell the truth, to scream that it was no accident, that it was all intentional, planned, cruel. She wanted to say that Patricia was doing this on purpose, that she was systematically removing everything that brought Helen comfort or relief, that she was turning this house into a place of disguised suffering. But she was afraid of losing the job that supported her 2 teenage children, afraid of being accused of lying or stirring up trouble, afraid of causing a bigger problem she couldn't control. So she just said softly, "I'm not sure. Mrs. Miller, maybe it was put away there by mistake, maybe someone found it and put it in the wrong place. But I'll keep an eye out. I promise I'll make sure it doesn't happen again." But it happened again, and again, and again. Every time Joanna put the ointment back in Helen's drawer, it would disappear the next day. Every time Joanna placed a cushion on the porch chair, it would mysteriously vanish. Patricia maintained absolute control over every detail of that house, and especially over her mother-in-law's comfort. Leo traveled to New York in the second week of May and was scheduled to be away for 10 days. He had a series of important meetings with international investors and couldn't return sooner. He called home every night, always in a hurry, always with the background noise of restaurants or hotels. "How are things there, Patricia? And my mom, is she okay?" Patricia would answer in a sweet, reassuring voice. "Everything's great, honey. Your mom is fine, eating well, getting her rest. Don't worry, focus on your work." But the reality was very different. With Leo away, Patricia intensified her control. Helen's meals were served at even stricter times. Breakfast at 8 sharp, lunch at noon, dinner at 7. No snacking between meals, no asking for anything different from what was prepared. "Discipline," Patricia would say with that icy smile, "is essential for the health of someone your age, Helen. You need a routine." Helen obeyed in silence. She ate without appetite, chewing slowly, feeling each forkful go down her tight throat with difficulty. She was losing weight visibly. Her clothes hung loosely on her, her shoulders were more stooped, her face more gaunt. Joanna watched it all with growing concern and helplessness. It was during that week that the worst happened. Helen woke up one night with a terrible pain in her spine, a pain that radiated down her legs and prevented her from moving. She lay there, moaning softly, tears streaming from the corners of her eyes. When Joanna arrived in the morning, she found the old woman still in bed, pale, her body rigid with pain. "Mrs. Miller, you need to see a doctor," Joanna said, alarmed. "I'm going to get Mrs. Davis." "No, no," Helen murmured with difficulty. "I don't want to be a bother, it'll pass." But Joanna insisted and went to get Patricia, who was in the private gym she kept on the second floor, running on the treadmill with headphones on. When Joanna knocked on the door and explained the situation, Patricia turned off the treadmill and wiped the sweat from her face with a white towel. Her face showed no concern, only mild irritation. "Joanna, my mother-in-law is elderly. Elderly people have aches and pains. It's normal," Patricia said coldly. "She's just playing the victim to get attention. It always happens when my husband travels. I've noticed the pattern. But Mrs. Davis, she's really in bad shape. She can't even get up." Patricia sighed, as if dealing with a stubborn child. "Fine, I'll go see." She went to Helen's room, glanced quickly at her mother-in-law lying in bed, and said in a calm, controlled voice, "Helen, you need to make an effort. Lying in bed all day will only make it worse. I'll have Joanna help you get up and walk around the house. Movement is the best medicine." "But I can't," Helen whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "It hurts too much." Patricia smiled, but it was a smile without warmth. "Helen, with all due respect, you need to stop this behavior. My husband works very hard to provide comfort for all of us. It's not fair for him to come back from his trip and find you like this, victimizing yourself. It's tiring, you know? It's tiring for everyone." Helen closed her eyes, feeling the words cut deeper than any physical pain. She felt shame, humiliation, loneliness. She nodded, and with Joanna's help, managed to sit on the edge of the bed. Every movement was torture, but she didn't complain anymore. She just swallowed her groans and tried to smile so as not to displease. Joanna helped Helen get dressed, wash her face, and come down for breakfast. The old woman ate little, her hands trembling as she held her cup. Patricia watched from a distance, sitting on the sofa with her tablet, saying nothing, just watching. That afternoon, while Patricia was in her office on a video conference, Joanna sat next to Helen on the porch. The old woman was in one of the hard chairs, her body tense, her face contorted. Joanna took her hand and said softly, "Mrs. Miller, you need to tell your son what's happening here." Helen shook her head slowly. "He won't believe." "Me? He'll think I'm making it up." "Patricia is very clever, Joanna. She never leaves a trace. Everything she does looks like care, like concern. How can I prove it?" Joanna squeezed the old woman's hand. "I can tell him. I saw everything. I saw the hidden ointment. I saw the cushions disappear. I saw how she treats you." Helen looked at Joanna with gratitude and sadness. "If you do that, she'll fire you. And you need this job. You need to support your children. I won't let you get hurt because of me." The two women sat there holding hands in a shared silence, two tired souls trying to survive in a house that looked beautiful on the outside, but hid cruelty within. Leo returned from New York on a Friday night, arriving around 9 o'clock. The flight had been delayed due to bad weather, and he was especially tired after 10 intense days of meetings, Presentations, business dinners, and sleepless nights in a hotel room. He walked into the house with his heavy suitcase, his tie loosened, a stubble on his face, tired but happy to finally be back home with his family. Patricia greeted him at the door with a tight hug and a long kiss, as if she had missed him terribly. She was impeccable, as always, wearing an elegant dress, perfect makeup, a soft perfume. The house was also impeccable, every object in its right place, as always. Dinner was ready on a table set with candles and wine glasses, soft music playing from the living room sound system, scented candles perfuming the air with lavender and vanilla. "And my mom, how is she?" was his first question as soon as he pulled away from the hug, looking around as if expecting to see Helen appear in the living room to greet him. "She's fine, honey. Went to bed early, as she has been lately," Patricia replied with absolute naturalness, as if nothing were wrong. "You know how it is, age catches up and she gets tired more easily. She was particularly tired today, had dinner early and went up to her room right after. I thought it was best to let her rest." Leo nodded, accepting the explanation without question, without suspicion. After all, Patricia had always taken such good care of everything during his absences. Leo went upstairs to see his mother. He knocked lightly on the door and went in. Helen was lying on her side, her back to the door. She heard her son's voice and turned slowly. When she saw him, her eyes lit up for a brief moment, but then returned to that expression of exhaustion and resignation. "Mom, how are you? I missed you," Leo said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I'm fine, honey. Fine. How was your trip?" They talked for a few minutes. Leo told her about the meetings, the new projects, the opportunities that were arising. Helen listened and smiled, asking the right questions, showing genuine interest. But Leo, absorbed in his own stories, didn't notice how much thinner his mother was, how her eyes seemed sunken and lifeless, how her voice came out weak and trembling. When he stood up to leave, adjusting his watch, Helen almost said something. She felt the words rise in her throat like a scream trapped for weeks. She opened her mouth, the words on the tip of her tongue trembling to come out. "My son, I need to tell you what's happening. I need to tell you I'm not okay, that I'm scared, that your wife is not who you think she is." But then she remembered Patricia's cold words echoing in her mind. "It's tiring for everyone. You're victimizing yourself. My husband works too hard to put up with this kind of behavior." And she was afraid of not being believed, of being called crazy or senile, of causing a problem in her son's marriage, of losing the only place she still had in the world. She slowly closed her mouth and just said with a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes, "Sleep well, my love. I'm glad you're back. I missed you. I'm glad." Leo left the room, closing the door carefully so as not to make noise, and went down the marble staircase to have dinner with his beautiful, smiling wife. Helen lay there, alone in the darkness of the too-large room, listening to his footsteps fade down the hall, feeling the crushing weight of loneliness squeeze her chest until it hurt more than any physical pain. She turned on her side, hugged her pillow, and cried in silence, as she had learned to do so, as not to bother anyone. The following days brought an increasingly suffocating and oppressive routine for Helen. Leo had returned to work with the same intensity as before his trip, perhaps even greater, because the projects he had presented to investors in New York had been enthusiastically approved, and now he had to put them into action, coordinating teams, managing tight deadlines, and dealing with the pressure to prove he deserved the trust placed in him. He left home earlier and earlier, sometimes before 7 in the morning, and returned later and later, often after 11 at night. Some days he didn't even have dinner at home, making do with hurried sandwiches at the office or in meetings that stretched late into the night at important client dinners in Cherry Creek North. When he was home, he brought his work with him, glued to his phone, answering emails, participating in video conferences, always divided among 1,000 simultaneous demands. Patricia continued with her impeccable smile, her precise and calculated gestures, her refined cruelty disguised as care and concern. Helen no longer recognized herself when she looked in the fogged bathroom mirror on difficult mornings. The face staring back at her was that of a stranger, someone who seemed to have aged 10 years in just a few months. Her face was gaunt with deep furrows, her hollow cheeks making her facial bones stand out, her lifeless eyes sunken in dark sockets. She had lost more than 20 pounds since arriving at that house nearly 3 months ago, full of hope and gratitude. The clothes she had brought hung on her increasingly thin body, like forgotten rags on an old hanger. Her arms looked like fragile twigs about to break. Her hands trembled constantly from weakness, pain, and fear. The pain in her back and hips had become a constant and relentless companion, a presence that never left her, not even when she managed to finally sleep for a few restless hours before waking up again with her whole body aching. It was on a cold Monday in June, one of those mornings when Denver wakes up with fog blanketing the mountains, that everything began to escalate into something even worse and more desperate. Helen woke with the first ray of sunlight piercing the curtain and couldn't get out of bed. She literally couldn't move her body. She tried to turn on her side, as she did every morning, but the pain that exploded in her spine was so intense, so overwhelming that it left her completely paralyzed, gasping for breath, her heart racing in her chest, and a sense of panic rising in her throat. She tried again, gathering all the strength that remained in her battered body, tensing her muscles, praying softly to succeed. Nothing. Her body simply wouldn't obey her brain's commands. It was as if her bones had turned to glass, ready to shatter at the slightest movement, as if each vertebra were being crushed by an invisible and unbearable weight. She lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling tears stream from the corners of her eyes. She heard Patricia's footsteps in the hallway. She tried to call out, but her voice was too weak. She waited. Joanna would arrive in half an hour. Maybe she could hold on until then. But Patricia opened the bedroom door. She was dressed in workout clothes, her hair in a perfect ponytail, her skin glowing from expensive products. She looked at Helen in bed and frowned. "Helen, it's almost 9 o'clock. You're not up yet." "I tried," Helen whispered. "But I can't. The pain is too strong today." Patricia sighed deeply, the sigh of someone dealing with an extremely inconvenient person. She walked to the window and threw open the curtains with a sharp gesture, letting the bright morning sun flood the room. "Helen, this has gone too far. You're giving in to the pain, letting it control you. You need to have some willpower." "But I really can't," Helen repeated, her voice choked with emotion. "I feel like my body is broken." Patricia approached the bed, crossed her arms, and looked at her mother-in-law with an expression that mixed impatience and something that looked like contempt. "Helen, I'm going to be honest with you because someone has to be. This behavior is affecting the whole house. My husband is stressed with work, comes home tired, and still has to worry about you. I'm tired too. Taking care of someone who doesn't want to help themselves is exhausting." Helen felt each word like a stab. "I don't want to be a bother, I swear I don't." "Then get out of that bed, now. I'm going to count to 3. If you don't get up, I'm going to have a serious talk with my husband about other alternatives." Other alternatives, the words hung in the air, like a concrete threat. Helen understood perfectly. She was being threatened with being sent away, maybe to a nursing home, maybe back to the empty apartment where she would live alone until she couldn't anymore. For a moment, fear overcame the pain. With a superhuman effort, she placed her hand on the edge of the bed and tried to push herself up. Her body protested, every muscle screaming. She managed to sit on the edge of the bed, her face white with pain, cold sweat trickling down her forehead. "There, you see. You can do it when you want to," Patricia said with a cold smile. "Now get dressed and come down for breakfast. Joanna should be here any minute." Patricia left the room and closed the door. Helen sat on the edge of the bed, trembling all over, feeling that something inside her had finally broken. It wasn't just her body that hurt. It was her soul. It was her dignity. It was everything. Joanna arrived minutes later and found Helen still sitting on the edge of the bed, dressed only in her nightgown, crying silently. She rushed to her. "Mrs. Miller, what happened?" Helen couldn't answer. She just fell into Joanna's arms and cried, sobbing like a lost child. Joanna hugged the frail old woman, feeling anger rise in her chest. This couldn't go on. It just couldn't. "I'll help you get dressed and have breakfast, then I'm calling your son," Joanna said with determination. "No, please, he won't believe me, and it will make everything worse." But Joanna had already made up her mind. As she helped Helen get dressed, navigate the stairs carefully, and sit at the breakfast table, she mentally planned her next move. She could no longer be an accomplice to this through her silence. After breakfast, Patricia left for an appointment. She said she wouldn't be back until late afternoon. As soon as her car disappeared through the gate, Joanna picked up her phone and looked for Leo's number. She had his contact information because she sometimes needed to inform him about household matters when Patricia wasn't available. She called. The phone rang several times before going to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Leo must be in a meeting. Joanna left a message. "Mr. Miller, it's Joanna. Please, I need to talk to you about Mrs. Miller. It's urgent. Call me when you can." But Leo didn't return the call. He was in an important presentation for foreign investors, and his phone was on silent inside his briefcase. When he finally saw the missed calls and heard the message, it was late afternoon. He thought it was strange, but figured it was probably something simple, like a doctor's appointment his mom needed to schedule. He'd call after dinner. That night, Leo came home to find a special dinner prepared. Patricia was radiant, in a new dress with flawless makeup. She had made his favorite dish, opened an expensive bottle of wine, and put on music. She was celebrating something. "What's going on?" Leo asked, smiling. "I got the contract for that penthouse in Wash Park, the one I've been negotiating for months," she said, jumping with excitement. "It's going to be the biggest project for my firm. I'm so happy." Leo hugged his wife, happy for her, proud. They had dinner talking about the project, about her ideas, about how this could boost her career. Joanna's call was completely forgotten. Meanwhile, Helen ate dinner alone in her room from a tray Joanna had brought. She ate little, as always. Joanna sat beside her and held her hand. "I tried to call your son, but he didn't answer. I'll try again tomorrow." Helen shook her head. "It's no use, Joanna. He won't listen. He's too busy, too involved in his own life. And I understand. He works so hard. He deserves to be happy. I don't want to be a burden." "You are not a burden. You are his mother. You have the right to be cared for with dignity." But Helen had already given up. That morning's conversation with Patricia had broken something inside her. The threat of being sent away, of losing even this place that, despite everything, was still where her son lived, was too much to bear. The following week, the situation worsened even more. Helen began to have trouble eating. She could no longer come downstairs for meals, so she ate in her room, always in small portions that Joanna brought hidden from Patricia, because her employer insisted that her mother-in-law needed to come down and eat at the table like a normal person. One day, Patricia came up to the room around noon and found Helen lying in the dark, curtains drawn. She didn't bring the food. Helen was anxiously awaiting, even knowing she wouldn't have much of an appetite. Instead, she sat calmly in the wooden chair beside the bed, crossed her legs elegantly, tucked her flawless blonde hair behind her ear, and began to speak in a calm, almost hypnotic voice, each word carefully chosen, like a predator who knows exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. "Helen, we need to have a serious and honest talk, woman to woman. Have you ever stopped to think sincerely that maybe this house isn't the best place for you at this stage of your life? That maybe you need more specialized, more professional care than I can offer here?" Helen slowly turned her face to Patricia, her eyes wide with pure instinctive fear, her heart racing dangerously in her chest. "What exactly are you trying to say?" Patricia sighed, as if explaining the obvious to someone stubborn. "I'm saying, Helen, that there are very good places out there, very comfortable and well-equipped, where people of your age and in your condition receive professional care 24 hours a day. Doctors on call, trained nurses, physical therapists, nutritionists, everything you need. Wouldn't it be better for you to be in an environment like that, specifically prepared for your needs?" "Are you trying to send me to a nursing home?" Helen whispered, her voice trembling as much as the hands clutching the sheet, the world spinning around her, all her worst anxieties materializing in that conversation. Patricia grimaced in disapproval, as if Helen had said something vulgar. "It's not a nursing home, Helen, for God's sake. What a horrible, outdated word. They're modern assisted living facilities, beautiful places with gardens, activities, comprehensive care. And honestly, thinking about this whole situation, I think it would be better for everyone involved. For you, who would finally get the proper medical care you obviously need. For my husband, who wouldn't have to worry so much and be torn between so many responsibilities. And for me too, so I could focus entirely on my work, on my growing firm, without having to constantly manage a household with such special and complex needs. Helen closed her eyes. Tears streamed down her temples. Please, don't send me away. I promise I'll get better. I'll try not to be a bother. Patricia stood up, smoothed her skirt, and walked to the door. Then we need to see a real change, Helen, because I really don't know how much longer I can maintain this situation. She left the room, leaving Helen shattered. The old woman turned face down into her pillow and cried until she had no tears left. She felt she was being slowly erased, silenced, eliminated. And the worst part, there was nothing she could do. Joanna, who had overheard part of the conversation from the hallway, entered the room as soon as Patricia went downstairs. She hugged Helen and made a decision. It didn't matter what happened to her job. It didn't matter if Patricia fired her. She was going to make Leo see the truth, even if it was the last thing she did in that house. Joanna waited for the right moment. She knew she had to act with intelligence, not impulse. For 3 days, she observed Leo's schedule, mentally noting when he arrived, where he went when he had a few free minutes. Finally, on a Wednesday, she saw the opportunity she had been waiting for. Leo came home earlier than usual, around 6 in the evening, because a meeting had been cancelled at the last minute. Patricia wasn't there. She had gone to her office to pick up fabric samples for a client. The house was quiet. Joanna heard the car pull into the garage and took a deep breath. It was now or never. "Mr. Miller, can I speak with you for a moment?" she said, appearing at the garage door before he could enter the house. Leo, who was grabbing his briefcase from the back seat, turned in surprise. "Of course, Joanna. Is something wrong?" "It's about Mrs. Miller, sir. I need you to see something. Please." There was something in Joanna's tone that made Leo stop and pay real attention, an urgency, a contained desperation. He closed the car door and followed the housekeeper into the house, up the stairs to his mother's room. When Leo opened the bedroom door, it took him a few seconds to process what he was seeing. Helen was standing beside the bed, leaning on the nightstand, her body bent at a painful angle, her legs visibly shaking. Her face was as pale as paper, covered in sweat. She was desperately trying to reach the bed to lie down, but every movement seemed an unbearable agony. "Mom!" Leo rushed to her, holding her by the arms. "What's happening? Why are you like this?" Helen looked at her son, and in her eyes was something that broke his heart. It wasn't just physical pain, it was humiliation, it was fear. It was the silent plea of someone who had lost their voice from screaming without being heard. "I'm trying to lie down, honey, but it hurts so much. I can't bend my back to sit on the bed." Leo carefully helped her lie down, alarmed by how little she weighed, as if he were holding a small bird. "Where's your ointment, the one the doctor prescribed?" Helen hesitated. Leo looked at Joanna, who was standing in the doorway. The housekeeper took a step forward. "The ointment disappears, Mr. Miller. Every time I put it back, it's gone again. The cushions I put on the chairs for Mrs. Miller to sit on also disappear. Her armchair never came back from the reupholstering Mrs. Davis said she was going to do." Leo frowned. "What do you mean, they disappear?" Joanna took a deep breath. It was the moment of truth. "I found the things hidden in the walk-in closet, sir, in the locked cabinet. The ointment, the cushions, even photographs that belonged to Mrs. Miller. I put them back, but they disappear again." Leo felt a chill run down his spine. He looked at his mother. "Mom, is this true?" Helen closed her eyes. The tears flowed. "I didn't want to worry you. You work so hard you're always tired, and she's your wife. I didn't want to cause trouble between you." "What kind of trouble, Mom? What else is happening that I don't know about?" It was as if a dam had broken. Everything came pouring out. Helen told him about the hard chairs, without cushions, about being forced to get up when she couldn't, about the veiled threats of being sent to a nursing home, about the cruel comments disguised as concern, about feeling invisible and unwanted in her own son's house. Leo listened, and with every word he felt anger mixed with devastating guilt grow inside him. How had he been so blind? How had he not noticed anything? Joanna added details she had witnessed. The day Patricia forced Helen to get out of bed when she literally couldn't move. The controlled meals, the isolation, all done subtly, always when Leo wasn't. There, always with words that sounded like care but were pure cruelty. Leo stood up, his face red with contained rage. "Stay here. I'll be right back." He went down the stairs quickly and straight to the second floor, to Patricia's walk-in closet. He took the key from the porcelain box, opened the locked cabinet. And there it was. The ointment, 3 cushions, framed photographs, his mother's shawl, all hidden, carefully removed from Helen's life. Just then, he heard the sound of Patricia's car pulling into the garage. Leo grabbed the ointment and one of the cushions and went downstairs. Patricia walked in through the kitchen door, smiling, carrying fabric samples. "Honey, you're home early. What a nice surprise," she said, going to kiss him. Leo took a step back. Patricia stopped, sensing something was wrong. "What is it? Did something happen?" Leo held up the ointment and the cushion in front of her like irrefutable evidence. It took a few seconds for it to sink in for Patricia. When it did, when she realized she had been discovered, the smile vanished from her face as if wiped away by an invisible hand. The mask began to crack. "Leo, I can explain," she said, her voice still trying to maintain that sweet, controlled tone she always used. "Then explain," Leo said, his voice low but charged with a cold anger Patricia had never seen in him. "Explain why my mother's ointment, which relieves her unbearable pain, was hidden in your locked cabinet. Explain why she's upstairs right now, unable to move from so much pain. Explain why my mother has lost over 20 pounds, practically disappeared since she moved into this house 3 months ago. Explain why the housekeeper had to show me what's happening, because you made sure to hide everything from me. Explain all of it, Patricia. I'm waiting." Patricia tried to maintain her composure, nervously fixing her hair, searching for the right words. "Leo, you don't understand the situation for what it really is. Your mother is manipulative. You don't see it, but I see it every day. She plays the victim to get attention, to create problems between us. I was just trying to help her have more willpower, to not give in completely to pain and self-pity. It was for her own good, believe me." "For her own good?" Leo practically shouted. "Hiding the ointment? That relieves her pain is for her own good. Forcing her to get up when she can't, threatening to send her to a nursing home. That's for her own good." Patricia switched tactics. Her eyes filled with tears. "I was trying to take care of her. You're not here. You don't see how much work it is. I do everything in this house. I manage everything. I take care of everything. And I still have my job, my career. She doesn't help. She just complains. She just wants attention." "She doesn't complain. That's the point. She didn't complain at all. She suffered in silence so as not to bother me. And you took advantage of that. Leo, please don't let her destroy our marriage with these lies." "They're not lies. I saw. It's all in your cabinet. And I saw my mother upstairs, destroyed, unable to even move. That's not manipulation. That's real suffering." Patricia's mask began to crumble. Her voice grew louder, more desperate. "And what did you expect? That I'd be her babysitter? That I'd give up my life to take care of a sick old woman? She's not my responsibility." "But she's mine," Leo yelled. "And I trusted you. I trusted you to take care of her, to be kind to her, to treat her with dignity." Patricia realized she had lost control. She tried to compose herself, but it was too late. The truth had been spoken, the cruelty exposed. "Leo, I'm sorry. I was stressed, under a lot of pressure. I didn't mean it. We can fix this. We can—" "No," Leo cut her off, his voice firm. "I want you out of this house." "What?" Patricia's eyes widened. "Leo, you can't be serious. This is my house too. This house was bought with my money, and you abused my mother under this roof. I won't allow it for another second. You can sleep in the guest room tonight. I want you gone by tomorrow." Patricia tried to argue, to plead, to manipulate, but Leo was unshakable. The image he had of his wife had completely shattered. There was no going back. That night, Leo slept sitting in a comfortable chair he had dragged close to his mother's bed. He refused to leave her alone for a second. He had brought the ointment, helped her apply it carefully to her back and hips, and placed all the cushions he could find to give her maximum comfort. He brought fresh water, soft blankets, anything he could do for his mother. He held her hand for hours, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking softly about old memories, about his father, about when he was a child. "Forgive me, Mom. Forgive me for being so blind, so absent, so negligent. Forgive me for not seeing what was happening right under my nose. Forgive me for trusting the wrong person and doubting you. Forgive me for every day of suffering you went through alone in this house," Helen cried, but for the first time in months they were tears of relief, not despair. They were tears of someone who had finally been truly seen, listened to attentively, and believed without question. They were tears of someone regaining their lost dignity. "You don't have to ask for my forgiveness, honey. You work so hard, you have so many responsibilities. I didn't want to be another burden for you to carry." In the following days, Patricia moved out. There was no public scandal, no fight. Leo spoke with a lawyer and began the divorce proceedings. Patricia tried to fight, threatened to sue, made up stories. But Leo had Joanna as a witness. He had the evidence from the cabinet. He had the detailed account of everything. The house changed completely. Leo cancelled trips, renegotiated deadlines, and started working from home more often. He hired a nurse to help with his mother's care. He took Helen to specialists who adjusted her medications and physical therapy. The floral armchair returned, not to the bedroom, but to the porch, in a place of honor. Joanna got a raise and eternal gratitude. She became not just an employee, but a true friend. Someone who had the courage to do the right thing despite being afraid of the consequences. Helen began to regain weight, to smile again. The physical pain still existed, as it always would at her age. But now there was love around her. There was genuine care. There was dignity. The light returned to her eyes. Her voice regained its strength. Leo learned to listen, to pay attention, to not let himself be blinded by work or appearances. He learned that family comes first, always, and that true love is shown in small daily actions, not in beautiful houses or empty words. Months later, on a Sunday afternoon, Leo found his mother on the porch, sitting in her armchair with her Bible in her lap and a smile on her face. She was looking at the garden, at the mountains in the distance, and there was peace in her gaze. He sat beside her, took her hand. "Are you happy, Mum?" "I'm at peace, my son. I'm finally at peace." And it was true. After so much suffering, Helen had found her place again. Not in a picture-perfect magazine house, but in a real home where she was seen, loved and valued, where she could grow old with dignity, surrounded by those who truly cared. Cruelty, when well disguised, can go unnoticed for a long time, but the truth always finds a way to surface, and when it does, it changes everything. Sometimes justice comes late, but when it arrives, it brings with it not only punishment for the wrongdoer, but restoration for the one who suffered, and that restoration is worth every tear, every pain, every moment of waiting. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Helen, Leo and Joanna has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this narrative about dignity, courage and family love, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you most in this story. Have you ever witnessed similar situations? Do you know someone who needs to be seen and heard like Helen? Every day we bring intense and true stories like this one, revealing the deepest and most real side of the human soul, family relationships, and the challenges we face. We'll see you in the next episode with another story that will make you reflect on what truly matters in life.